Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Rummy's Rock Stars, and tonight we have the privilege of having Joyce Day with us. For those of you who haven't met Joyce, she is a delight to talk to, and if her topic tonight is really Joyce. I mean, I have watched you do so many incredible things, and overcoming obstacles. I think you are a master at overcoming obstacles and really just facing them head on from what I have seen. And I am excited to hear you talk tonight. So without further ado, this is Joyce Day.
Well, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. So yeah, I saw the call for topics, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to throw that name at that little that this little talk in the hat there and share it, because a couple of weeks ago, it was one of those last minute kind of God things where I'm in this National Association of Women Business Owners. We have a local chapter, and they at the last minute asked me to. They gave me a week and a half's notice, so I guess it wasn't that last minute, but they asked me if I would like lead a table discussion for the January meeting, and it was a week and a half away, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't mind talking. Obviously, as doTERRA people, we talk all the time and we get up in front of people, so I was like, sure, no problem. And they're like, okay. I was like, what's the topic? And they said, well, it's January, so we've got another speaker who's a business coach, and she's going to be talking about goal setting for the whole you. And so, do you have anything that would kind of go along with like goal setting and New Year stuff? And I was like, I guess I could talk about goal setting and like overcoming obstacles maybe. And they're like, great. And the next thing I know, like 20 minutes later, the email's out and I'm doing this talk. And I was like, huh, okay. And it's just a little 20-minute thing. So I thought, oh, this will be fine. And then they got closer and I was like, I started to panic like 2 days before, and then the day before. And then the morning of, I was like, what the heck do I know about goal setting? I'm not a coach. I haven't been to any kind of training on this. I haven't even read any books on goal setting in a while that I could like summarize. I was literally going through my bookshelves, like finding something that was about goal setting and about overcoming obstacles. And I thank God I tacked that on to the end, because then that morning I thought, well, I mean, same thing. Like I thought, what do I really know about overcoming obstacles? And then I don't know, the thought just came to me like, wait a second, I actually think I might be an expert at this. So for those of you that don't know me, I grew up in a really troubled family with two alcoholic parents, and there was a lot of domestic violence and neglect and just abuse in all different forms. And it was really long and miserable. And so I'm not going to go into the whole story, but it was just, I mean, literally like, it was like 15 years of just absolute crazy insanity. And then it all finally fell apart when I was probably about 15 or 16, and I've been living on my own since then. I took myself from, so that's where I'll start is I was about 14 years old and my whole family blew up finally. And we were taken away from my mom. My dad had been kind of living on the streets and, in and out of halfway houses and, suicidal and that sort of thing. And we'd been living with my mom and her partner. And there was a lot of violence and just really bad situations. And we finally got taken away. And I spent about 6 weeks sleeping on a friend of my older sister's couch until they finally found me because I'd kind of disappeared. And they made me go back to school. So I missed a big chunk of my freshman year. And I had been, I flunked all my classes. So in my freshman year, I was forced to go live with my dad and his new wife and her family. And then I was going to high school and I was just a hot mess. I was very angry. I was very emotional. I was in a lot of despair. And I had my own struggles with thoughts of, even ending my life, not seriously, but, they were there. I was just really, really, really miserable. And so they put me in this group for troubled kids. And I went there every 2 weeks, I think, my freshman year. So I went back to school in the fall and went to this group for troubled kids. And then sometime in the spring, I had this, just a whole, it was God stepping into my life, honestly. And I was sitting in this group, and they would go around the room and they would just talk about how bad everything was at home. I know this was meant to be therapeutic and helpful. And, I'm not saying people shouldn't get help or go to group therapies or anything like that. But in that moment for me, after going there every 2 weeks for all those months and still being surrounded by the insanity, I mean, my mom was still around, and my siblings we were all a hot mess. I have 5 siblings. And so, so I sat there listening to them, and they went around the table, and it got to be my turn, and I was one of the last ones. And I just had this feeling rise up inside of me. And I stood up and I said, you know what? I can't keep coming here. I can't come here and listen to this and just listen to how bad everything is. It's not helpful. And that was my turning point. That was the first time I really hit a turning point and said, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. And that started my journey I made a decision in that moment that I'm going to do whatever it takes to get out of this insanity and make a better life for myself. So the rest of my life story has been quite an adventure. I'll tell you more of the details here as we kind of go through, but in the end, I'm a hydrogeologist today. I have a master's degree. I'm a licensed geologist in the state of Wyoming and Illinois. And I worked in the landfill industry for the last 6 or 7 years of my career, monitoring for groundwater contamination. And I have a beautiful family. I'm sober. I did struggle with alcoholism in my 20s and binge eating disorder and sugar addiction. I'm happily off of sugar. I don't binge eat anymore. And I'm also sober from alcohol and have been for 12 years. So that's 12 years for all of those things. And my life is amazing. And I'm still on that journey of I'm still on that journey from that 14-year-old girl that I was to create the best life that I can for myself, because the thing is it never really ends. I can always improve my life and make it better. So in the spirit of overcoming obstacles, that morning of this talk, I said, I'm just going to get this index card out. And I wrote down Joyce's 7 tips for overcoming obstacles on an index card. And I just thought I would just share it at this women's event. And I didn't really think anything of it other than I'm just trying to do what I said I would do. And it was really great. I had a ton of positive feedback from it. And they all were like writing notes and things and really excited about it, and have really encouraged me since then to go forward with this and tell it more. So that's why I'm here tonight, is to share with you guys Joyce's 7 tips for overcoming obstacles. And I'll give you some examples as we go along. It applies to business, but it also applies to any obstacles. And sometimes when we're building our doTERRA business, there's other obstacles going on. And so hopefully you guys find this to be helpful for not just your personal lives, but for doTERRA as well. So with that, I'm going to share my screen if it's okay, so that so I have my notes, and then you guys can see it too, if that's helpful. I actually started writing. I'm actually thinking about maybe turning this into a book. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But in case you're wondering why all that's there, we'll see. Okay. So step 1A for identifying or overcoming your obstacles. The first step for me in that moment at 14 years old, my freshman year, was identifying what I didn't want anymore. This is the first step. And this is a step that sometimes it takes us a while to get to this point. We can be pretty miserable for a while before we finally hit that point where we say, okay, enough is enough. I do not want this anymore. And so as a freshman, and being surrounded by all that insanity and dysfunction and, living in pretty extreme poverty and just, all these things, I knew what I didn't want anymore. So hopefully when you're ready to overcome an obstacle, for it to become an obstacle, you have to realize you don't want it anymore. So that's your first step. Pretty easy, right? I don't want this anymore. Okay. So the second part of step 1, and it's a really, really key piece, because people get really stuck in over the years, I've had a lot of people ask me, like, how have you done what you've done? And I've never really had a real clear, concise answer. And I have wondered why, there are a lot of people that I grew up with who are still stuck in the insanity. They didn't make it out. And so I don't have a clear answer, other than I think there's some things that go along with this. I think some people get stuck in what they don't want, and they're so miserable and unhappy, and they just keep focusing on what they don't want. And so I could have done that. I could have stayed at that table and kept going around every 2 weeks and talking about how bad everything was. I could have stayed in that, and I never would have moved forward, even though, it was meant to be therapeutic. So sometimes we have to, once we know what we don't want, we then have to identify what we do want. And once we do that, and we need to get, fairly specific about it. And then that's where we're going to keep our focus. So for me, in that moment, for that example, what I did want was to create a life for myself that was going to be better. And I didn't even know for sure what that meant. I knew it involved food and clean clothes and a place to live without crazy people, but I didn't really even have a real idea of what that was going to be. But I knew that I wanted to create a life for myself away from the insanity that was a good life for me. And so that's where I had to keep my focus. And so as I moved forward, and I'm going to come back to that again in a second, if you use the example of weight loss, because I've struggled with weight loss and sugar addiction and binge eating and everything, okay, I don't want to binge eat anymore. I don't want to feel out of control around food. I don't want to compulsively eat sugar like a maniac. I don't want to do these things anymore. So then this is really important. I have to identify what I do want, because if I stay stuck on what I don't want, it just keeps me in the insanity. And so I focus on, I want to live a life where I don't do these things, where I eat a sane amount of food, and I have a structured eating plan, and I easily choose healthy foods. I had to literally create a vision for myself of what I thought I wanted, which is really hard to do when you're that crazy with food, because you don't even know what normal is anymore, but that's a separate issue. And then from a business perspective, I'm going to try to give you 3 examples here that will kind of carry through the whole thing. But from a business perspective, we have an obstacle. Maybe we want to grow our teams. Okay. And so we know maybe we've been doing it for a while and things are happening that we don't like, and we don't want that anymore. So it's really important, if we don't like what's going on in our teams, we need to understand what we don't like and what do we want to create instead. And that's what's going to feed you through the rest of this process here. So get really clear on what you do want. Part of what we want in our community, we've been building my team for about 6 years. In our group, we really want to build a sense of builders community, of us coming together and supporting each other, of knowing what each other's dreams and goals are and praying over each other's teams, and not just getting on team calls. Aren't even working for us at this point. We've actually stopped team calls, and we're actually doing live meetings. And we can talk more at the end about what we're specifically doing to build community for our team. But so we need to get clear on that. So what do we want? What do I want from my team? I want a team of leaders who are committed and capable, and those sharers and people that are dabbling, a place that we all come together and we know each other. We know each other's lives. We know each other's kids' names. We know each other's spouses' names. And we know what our goals are. And I can think of any builder in my group and think, oh my gosh, Christina's easy to pick, Christina Norris, if she watches this later, because she has such a cool dream about buying a house in the country that her son, who has autism, who loves to ride his riding lawnmower, she wants to have a little bit of land around this house in the country where her son can drive his tractor around out there and mow the lawn, and he just loves it. He would do it every day. And every time I think of her, I think of that goal for her, and I feel super like, I'm just like, rock on. I can't wait. Like, I feel excited for her to hit that goal, and I'm that much more motivated to support her and send her good vibes and pray over that for her. So I identify what I want. That's what I want. That's what I want, is those kind of feelings and relationships in my group. Okay. So that's steps 1A and 1B. And we're going to keep our focus on 1B no matter what. And it may take us years to hit our goals, but we're going to keep our focus on what we do want. The second step we want to do is ask ourselves some questions. I think this is a super important part. We want to ask ourselves, what's going on with what we do want, and thinking about what we don't want. Is there some things we need to work on here? Is it a skills issue? Is it a mindset issue? Is there an acceptance issue that I need to work on here? That if I don't address those issues, it's going to make it hard for me to overcome the obstacle and to reach my goal, right? So some examples would be for my family. I was still living in the insanity, right? So, I still had crazy stuff going on all around me. And I was involved with a man who wasn't nice. And I was working as a waitress, and drugs and alcohol were around. And, there were so many opportunities for me to get pulled off track and pulled away from what I wanted to do, and still feel despair emotionally. It's not like I had in my mind, like, oh, I'm all good. I'm going to make a new life for myself and whatever. I still had I had PTSD. I had a ton of anxiety. I had hypervigilance. I had all the symptoms of, all the stuff that I had to deal with, on top of trying to change my life and work and date this guy and all these kind of things. And so one of the big issues around my family was an acceptance issue. Like, these people are all where they are, and there's a lot of complicating factors here, and they're not going to be the family I want them to be. Like, if I can just accept that, the whole process of what I'm going through is going to get easier, So for that, it was a more of an acceptance issue. Around the weight loss and the sugar addiction and everything, that was kind of an acceptance issue. I had a problem. I could try to every diet under the sun. I mean, I used to tell people I know way too much about health and nutrition because of my obsession with food. And so, until I was willing to accept that I really did have a problem, I wasn't going to get help. And so I can know everything I want to know about food. And yet I remember posting on MySpace back in the day, like, what an idiot I am, because I know all this stuff about health and nutrition, but I'm the girl that will, somehow manage to binge her brains out on stone ground whole wheat organic tortillas with low fat organic mozzarella cheese. And like, it's all this super nutritional stuff, but I still ate like 3,000 calories in one sitting, like, it's so dumb. And so in that situation, that was a mindset issue and an acceptance issue, that I had a problem and I needed to go find help. And I'm not going to overcome that obstacle until I freaking go do that, right? Until I hit that point. And then with business, sometimes it's a skills issue. A lot of us go straight to, I suck, I'm not going to be able to do this. So-and-so is being successful. She's awesome. She can do it. I can't do it. But really, I think a lot of the issues with doTERRA sometimes can be skills related, but we let our emotions and how we feel about it drag us down and stop us from dealing with the fact that it's a skills issue. Instead of, I invited somebody to a class and they didn't come. Okay, well, maybe there's more to the story here. Like, let's talk about it. Could there be a skills issue here that maybe you just don't know what to say, or maybe you didn't sample them first, or maybe you didn't whatever. So it doesn't mean that you suck or you're not going to be able to hit that goal or whatever. It might just mean that you got to ask yourself some really good questions with kindness and see, if maybe you're a more established builder and you've got leaders that aren't doing what you think they should be doing. Well, maybe that's a mindset issue. They're not here to do what you need them to do. They're here to do what they want to do. And your job is to support them in that and go find new builders who want to do what you want them to do. Okay. So sometimes it's an acceptance issue. Sometimes we just have to accept our team for where they're at. And if we want something more than that, we got to get our butts out there and find new leaders that are going to do it with us. Right. And that can be a really hard place to be in. So I say that with a lot of love and compassion. Or maybe it's an acceptance issue. So ask good questions is what I'm saying. Okay. Once you kind of work through that process and you know what you want and you're staying super focused on that, you've asked yourself good questions. And from that, hopefully you're going to get to a place where you can then, I want you to write down or at least come up with some kind of an idea of what do you think it might take for you to get where you want to go. Okay. And that's going to become your next step. It's not your goal, because your goal is what you came up with in 1B. All right. So I like to give the example of, I wanted to create this whole new life for myself, right? That's my ultimate goal. The steps that I have to take to get there can vary widely, and you might try stuff that doesn't work out. And so an example would be, what if I would have wanted to change my life and I made the goal to graduate from high school? For one, what if I didn't make it? Then people will think, oh, I'm not going to get to have my goal now. I don't get to have that better life because I didn't graduate from high school, or I flunked something, or I didn't do good enough to go to college. That's a better example. What if I didn't get to go to college? What if I never got the scholarships? What if I didn't get good enough grades to get into the things that I needed to, whatever, Well, if I make getting to college my goal, and I don't get to go to college, then that could knock me down maybe for the rest of my life. I might not recover from that. So don't confuse your potential next steps with your goal, because I can create an amazing life for myself, and God will decide if going to college is needed for that. My job is to just row the damn boat as hard as I can until I get to where it is I think I want to go. And so just come up with some kind of a plan. What do you think in your gut will help you to get where you want to go? For me, all I could think freshman year was I got to get to college. I didn't know anybody who had, a good life that hadn't gone to college. When I saw the people out there that I admired that were successful, they all went to college, And so that's all I could think. It was the only thing I could think of that would help me get where I wanted to go. And so that's just what I thought. Now, I still had 4 years of high school, or 3.5, almost, a little over 3 years of high school to get through. And just to even try to get to college. And then I got to college, and then I still had to go through college with very few social skills, PTSD. I moved out of state. I was very socially awkward. I was drinking and doing other things to cope. And, I was a hot mess. But, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I got to college. Yay, that can't be the goal, because now I have to go through college. And going through college took me a long time. And it took me a long time to find out what I wanted to do and everything. So I had to keep my eyes on, I'm creating a better life for myself. College is just that next step in the road. Okay. If it's weight loss, if I go through this process for the binge eating and the sugar addiction and stuff like that, what do I think will help me get where I want to go? Now that I've accepted that I really don't want this shit anymore. And I apologize for the cussing. I probably shouldn't cuss. From that, what do I want? Right? I want to be sane around food. I want to have a healthy body. I want to feel good in my clothes. Okay, cool. So that's my goal, is to be sane and have a healthy body. Like, that's a good goal. Okay. So ask myself the good questions. It was total acceptance issue. I have to accept that I have an eating disorder and I need to get help. Okay. Not really a skills issue, because I know what to do. I know what to eat. I just feel incapable of doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So, okay. All right, good. We're on step 3. What do you think will get me there? All right. Well, I need help, and I don't have the money to go to rehab, and I certainly don't have the time. So I'm going to go to a 12-step program and get help. I think that's the next thing. And that's what God put before me. So, all right, great. If it's your business, what do you think will get you where you want to go? If you're, in the beginning, when I was just starting my business, what I think will get me where I want to go is just to go take a ton of action. Get classes on the schedule no matter what, even if they're public classes at coffee shops. Get out and walk the pavement and hand out flyers. Don't be afraid to talk to people, or get on the phone and cold call businesses, or do whatever it took. That's what I thought would get me where I wanted to go. If you're later in the business, maybe, you might have a different plan. Maybe you need to go get some real training on business and on sales. You might need to do that. So I've been at that point too, when I'm overcoming obstacles in my business. Maybe you need to get a business coach. Maybe you need to get a mentor. Maybe you need to get out and just enroll a whole bunch of new people and start over again. I don't know, whatever it is. So, okay, step 4, we're going to break it down now into smaller action items. What are the smaller things that are going to, because obviously getting to college when you're 3 years away from college is a pretty big action item. So what are the smaller items that I need to be doing each day to get me to that next step? The next step is to graduate from high school and hopefully get to go to college. Okay, well, I'm failing all my classes. I don't have any idea what to do in algebra. Literally, I feel like he's speaking a foreign language. And I need to get away from my family as much as I possibly can. So I guess I should get a job. Plus I need my own money. And so I better get a job. Okay. And then, what else? Like what else do I need to do? So those are the things that I did. I need to do my homework every day. So then that became my smaller action items that I could focus on. And those became my saving grace in the next step. So I'm very good with action items. Please, God, give me action items. I will take an action item any day because, so let me just finish step 4 here. So with the home stuff, it was that. With my food plan and my addiction stuff and the sugar addiction and all that stuff, it was my smaller action items. I needed to get a sponsor in the program to help me. I needed to get the literature and read it every day and figure out how the heck this 12-step thing worked. I needed to, take actions in my home that would get me closer to being more sane. Like I had to get rid of all the recreational sugar. You obviously can't have foods in your house that you're trying not to eat there, or they just call your name all the time. And that's all you're going to do is think about them until you eat them. So that became those smaller action items. And I needed to take care of myself emotionally because I was struggling with PTSD and I had anxiety, and that was all tying into the binge eating and everything. So I had to learn how to try to take care of myself emotionally. And then, and that was a slow process, but, and then with your business, heck, that's easy, right? doTERRA breaks down your daily action items of what to do in your business. Maybe it's training, maybe it's just doing the pipes process. Maybe it's coming up with some kind of action plan that you're going to consistently do every week in your business, and no excuses, just getting out there and making it happen. So what are those smaller action items? Break it down. And then step 5 is when you get discouraged, and you will get discouraged. Okay. Like just plan on it. All right. I'm not trying to be negative. It's just, there's no way around it. Right. Because if you're really trying to overcome an obstacle in your life, and we're talking about real obstacles here, we're not talking about little fluffy things. We're talking about overcoming obstacles. That's a big word. Right. And so if you're going to overcome an obstacle, you're going to get discouraged. I mean, I had to get through 3 years of high school and 5 years of college. And, and even then it's not like I had it all figured out. I was still a hot mess emotionally. I didn't get into recovery and get start getting help with PTSD and stuff until I was 28 years old. So I spent all of my 20s walking through life trying to feel okay and not feeling okay most of the time, and using food and, dating, men and relationships and all kinds of things to try to get myself to feel like I'm okay. So there was a lot of discouragement, but I still held on to that goal of I was creating, I believe that I have the ability to create a better life for myself if I can just stay focused on that goal and keep taking action towards it. And that's probably one of the greatest gifts that God gave me, was my persistence. So, so when you do feel discouraged, get out there and take more action towards your goals. It is the number one thing you can do, the fastest way out of feeling stuck. Okay. I'm not joking you. And it applies to every aspect of life. In high school, work more. If I'm struggling, I just went and worked more hours as a waitress. Like if I was having trouble with family or feeling like I wasn't sure, like getting out, make more money, that always made me feel better, and take more action. Like that got me out into the world where I wasn't immersed in that insanity. Or go to school more, but it was hard to go to school more because I worked. I couldn't do after school activities. And so that was hard for me, but I could always work more. So if there's something you can do towards your goal that will help you, go take action in it. And with the sugar addiction stuff, it was keep moving forward, keep walking every day with my dog, keep working on my nutrition to help myself balance out after so much sugar addiction over the years, keep going to meetings. Sometimes I would go to 3 or 4 meetings a day because my anxiety was so high that I literally was like, I didn't know what to do with myself. So at least I was around other people who could kind of understand what I was going through. So and those are all actions that were moving me towards my goal anyway. So that's what kept me going over the years, and helped me. And with your business, shoot, this one's a no-brainer. There were so many times I thought I was going to quit, or I would tell myself, I remember my first, few years, I wanted to replace my professional salary as a hydrogeologist so I could quit my job and be home with my daughter. And I had a pretty decent salary I needed to replace. And I at least needed to replace my take-home salary. And I remember the first few months, I got my monthly paychecks, and my first monthly paycheck was $11. And my second monthly paycheck was like $66. And my third monthly paycheck was like $111. And I kept calling them my upline and being like, Tracy, I'm going to need you to tell me one more time that this is a viable option because I'm having a hard time seeing it. Okay. And so she would have to talk me down off the ledge every month, basically. And Lynn Fingerhut too. Tracy Kennebeck and Lynn Fingerhut were there for me when I was getting started with my business. So every time I felt like, this isn't going to work for me, I taught a class, I can't tell you how many public classes I taught in the beginning that nobody came to. And I'd just be like, God, why is this so hard? Why does this, I suck at this. Why can't I, why aren't people coming? Why? And so, instead I would just, I'd have that moment of feeling really discouraged. And then I would just try to let it go. I would talk to my people. And then I would just say, well, I'm just going to do the stuff that's on my freaking calendar. I've got a class book next week and I've got a one-on-one, in a couple of days. I'll do that stuff. And if nothing else comes out of it, then I'll quit. But God's so good, right? Every time I said that, something good would happen. Somebody would call me out of the blue and be like, hey, I saw you post that thing and I would love to try some oils and blah, blah, blah. Or I'd go teach a public class and new people would actually show up and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so every time I felt I got to that place where, okay, if nothing comes out of these next couple things, I'll just quit. Every time really good things would happen, not crazy awesome, but good enough that it would keep me going, right? And that's totally the way it goes with overcoming obstacles, right? Okay, we're almost done here. Step 6 is always look for or ask for help, okay? This is so important. You cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone, okay? When I look back over my whole life and all the crazy things that's happened, there's nobody's going to show up on a white horse and rescue you. It's not going to work out the way you want it to. It's not going to be the help that you think you should have, but you will get help if you ask for it in your heart. Sometimes you ask for it in your heart. Sometimes it needs to happen physically. But if you ask for help or look for help, you will find it. I promise. Even when you're not even like you're working against yourself. So many examples are flooding to my mind. So in Harry Potter, I'm a big Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings geek. Not a geek, but I do enjoy them. So Dumbledore says in the second movie, in the second book, he says, help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. And I just like to think of the world as Hogwarts. We live in Hogwarts every day. The steps are changing all the time in this place. It's crazy here. Like weird stuff happens all the time. We live in Hogwarts and it is a magical world that we live in and good things happen all the time. And if we ask for help, help will come. I really believe that. And sometimes even when we don't ask for it, help will show up. And then step 7 is look for signs of progress and find a way to feel inspired every day. I cannot say enough about this. The signs of progress as a 14-year-old girl trying to change her life was getting somebody to help me with algebra where it started to make more sense and getting my grades turned around, hitting high honors or honors for the first time, getting a job and realizing, oh, I can make enough money to pay some rent. And I did. I lived on my own and paid my own rent when I was a sophomore junior in high school. And I lived on my own after that. I built that confidence and was able to see my progress. Like, okay, I can take care of myself now, no matter what insanity is going on anywhere else. With the sugar addiction and stuff, obviously weight loss was a sign of progress, but there was signs of progress too emotionally. Like I learned how to take care of myself emotionally when the anxiety kicks in, or I have other things pop up. I learned how to take care of myself. What's going to make me feel better and what's going to make me feel worse. Let's do some of the stuff that makes me feel better. And then with your business, there's obviously lots of ways to test and watch for signs of progress. And then finding a way to feel inspired is absolutely critical and not optional. And I would say, even if you're not overcoming an obstacle right now, just find ways to feel inspired. Again, I struggled with my relationship with God for a long time when I was younger, just because of everything I went through. And there was some religious abuse involved in my experiences too. So I was really afraid of God. If he did exist, I was really afraid of him. But I hoped that, I was hoping it was just something I never would have to deal with. And then ultimately I ended up in recovery, and you're forced to deal with your faith because that's just part of the recovery process. But even when I didn't have a close relationship with God, like I think one of my saving graces through this whole thing is, even as a little, younger girl, I have about 20 years of journals and places where I wrote down like how I felt about things. And one of the things I noticed, I just read a lot of them recently, just flipping through. And one of the things I've noticed is I always found a way to be grateful for something. I always brought it back to that. And I love to feel that way, because it was one of the few feelings that actually made me feel better. Instead of, I didn't have a lot of feeling, is mostly anxiety and PTSD and like, just trying to get through life here. And so those few moments of just being grateful that I was out of the insanity, and that I was in high school and I was getting better grades, and, just anything I could be grateful for. For whatever reason, I don't know where that came from, but it's something that I've always done. And now I see it as, that's probably some of the things that brought me towards better things in life naturally. So find a way to feel inspired. Maybe it's listening to music of faith in the mornings. Maybe it's watching your kids sleep at night. I mean, that always fills me with gratitude. Maybe it's looking at nature. I walk every day a lot, or I spend time in nature because nature always makes me feel inspired. Who knows what makes you feel inspired? It could be anything. So look for what are those things that make you feel just overwhelming gratitude, and practice feeling that way every day. Find a few minutes to just practice feeling good. It's been one of the biggest, most helpful things, not just for overcoming obstacles, but just helping me to overcome a lot of negative emotions and stuff. And this is something I'm intensely working on lately, is literally I practice feeling good. I walk in the mornings and I just talk about things. Sometimes I make things up about how wonderful I want my life to be. And so it could be talking about like when I hit my goals, how wonderful it's going to be. And I'll just talk it all out until I just get so excited and filled with gratitude that I can just feel it in my whole body from my head to my toes. And that is an amazing practice. It just it makes you a happier person in general. And it doesn't even seem to matter that it hasn't happened yet. I just feel super happy about it, about the possibility that it might be on its way, So anyway, so I would highly encourage you, especially if you struggle with any kind of emotional struggles, which a lot of us do, is that we can be intentional. We can't always control where our emotions go, but we can intentionally find ways to feel inspired, and that can bring us out of really dark places emotionally, I find. So those are the 7 steps, and I'm happy to answer questions if you like.
You want to take the screen share off?
Oh,
and then we'll go to that was awesome. There were some really good moments in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Dana, I'm so glad to hear that. That's wonderful. Dana said that sharing tonight was a God thing for her. So right on. I'm super happy. I'm going to not take this as awkward silence. I'm just going to take it as everyone's just taking a deep breath and absorbing for a second.
The way you broke it down and the steps that's phenomenal. I wrote all of that down, but not letting a missed goal get in the way of where you're actually going. That was like a key for me.
Yeah, I think it has to be because, you know, if we life is going to step in the way. There's going to be times that things don't work out. And I refuse to accept that I'm not going to be able to get to my goal. I just refuse to accept that, especially now. It was harder when I was younger, but I've seen enough magic in the world and enough things happen that now I really feel strong that, you know, God's got a plan, and maybe it doesn't include what I think it will, but that's why I said think. What do you think will get you there? And God will help us to figure out if that's really what we need to do or not. Dana, I'm so sorry to hear that. Wow, girl. My prayers are with you and with her too. All right. Well, if there's no other questions.
I'll stop the recording just a second. Maybe I'll stop the recording. There we go.